Welcome to Seggs Talk Radio, a podcast that explores kink and sex through candid and curious conversations. Join me and expert guests in exploring taboos and unpacking what it means to be sex and kink positive. Go check out our new website, sextalkradio.com. That is SEGGS talkradio.com. And I hope you enjoy the episode.
I'm not the biggest fan of penetration. And the research shows my anatomy doesn't actually really get much out of penetration. It's all external stimulation.
Yeah.
I do it because my husband likes it, and I want him to be happy too. But when you involve a vibrator, it helps the penis because the penis is feeling vibration.
I'm so excited to introduce you guys to Butter. Butter Wellness makes external prostate massagers for men. They're extremely high-powered, no insertion necessary, and they give really incredible prostate orgasms. You can get 20% off by going to butterwellness.com and use code SEXS, SEGGS. Over 80% of women, including myself, cannot have orgasms from penetrative sex alone. That is why it is so important that we find sex toys that we love. Honey Playbox makes an incredibly wide variety of toys. They literally have it all. They have wands, they have clit suckers, they have thrusting toys. They have so many options. And what's really cool about Honey Playbox is they are very technology forward. Many of their toys can be app controlled in addition to the regular settings and buttons on the toy, which makes it really fun for you and your partner. Go to honeyplaybox.com and use code SEXS, SEGGS, for 20% off of your entire order. This episode of Seggs Talk Radio is brought to you by the HUD app. The HUD app is changing the face of modern and casual dating by giving users a really fun and flirty interface, and also it has bedroom features where you can select all of the kinky and naughty things you're into and show those to potential future partners. I personally love using the HUD app, and I think it's a great system for finding kinky people near you. Go to hudapp.com/sextalk. That is hudapp.com/SEGGS talk, TALK, for more. One of the many things that I love about Mochi Melt is that it is an overall luxury experience using it. It tastes delicious and it looks gorgeous on the nightstand. If you want to try out Mochi Melt for yourself, go to mochimelt.com and use code THEA, THEA, for 15% off of your entire order. I recently created an account on sensually.com. It is an online platform for people to seek out and offer sensual and sex-positive experiences. This can look like being a BDSM provider, a sex coach, a escort. It covers a wide range of themes, and you can really find what you're looking for. And it is completely free to create an account or to explore. To learn more and browse both in-person and virtual experiences, go to sensuali.com. I recently squirted for the first time, and it was a lot of liquid. That's why I'm so glad that I've since found Splash Blanket. They create incredible waterproof blankets for all types of fluids. They have them in a bunch of different sizes and textures, and they are truly incredible and very absorbent. Go to splashblanket.us and use code SEGGS for 15% off of your entire order. Hi, Leann. How's it going?
That's wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to Seggs Talk Radio.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about ADHD and sex.
Me fucking too. My friends love to hear about sex, but they don't necessarily get the ADHD bit, and I'm super excited. So thanks for making the trek out here.
Of course.
It means a lot. It's a journey, but I appreciate it. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your journey and what led you to researching and supporting people with ADHD and sex.
Awesome. So for me, I was late diagnosed like many people. And
at what age?
I was diagnosed actually 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
My daughter has ADHD, so when we had to do the neuropsychological evaluation for her, a lot of the things that were coming up for her, I was like,
yeah,
that sounds familiar. So I went and I got tested myself, and lo and behold, ADHD.
Yeah.
Everything all of a sudden clicked and made sense. But at the same time, I didn't understand the implications ADHD could have on sex and intimacy, and I was also struggling in that area. And I would have clients come to me, and I just became specialized in ADHD as like a fluke. It just clicked. Everyone was coming to me. I was getting it.
What's needed.
I was reading more about it. I then started really dabbling into the idea of, well, then wait, what about the bedroom? Because ADHD just doesn't stop. It doesn't shut off in the bedroom. So I started realizing, okay, well, what is the disconnect for me? Because I was struggling to orgasm.
Okay.
I was struggling to be concentrated on the tasks at hand that we were trying to do in the bedroom. And I was never thinking about the why. And then once I started reading about like sensory and other things, I was like, oh, this makes sense. And I went to my husband and I was like, at the time we weren't married, but I went to him and I was like, I'm done faking my orgasms. I don't want to do that anymore. And I didn't realize.
Did he have any? He probably didn't have any idea.
He did.
Okay. It was like an unspoken.
It was, but that also was the problem, right? Like my partner at the time knew I might not have been totally there.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to say anything.
Right.
And I didn't want to say anything. Like the why, right? So communication was huge for me.
Yes.
And that's really kind of how I just fell into really specializing in ADHD and sexuality, because we all deserve pleasure. We all deserve to have our orgasms. We need to enjoy ourselves. But if we don't know why and we don't have the education and the access, how are we supposed to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was diagnosed like less than 2 years ago, and still to this day, almost daily it feels like, especially after talking to people like you, I have so many light bulb moments of all of these little things that I kind of thought were just neurotic about myself, like actually are related to my brain chemistry. And I also have developed a lot more like empathy and understanding for myself. I get very easily overwhelmed by sensory things, and I'm also sober. So, like going out and being loud in social environments, there are all of these things where I'm the friend that friends would tease for being there for an hour, or like all of these things started to click into my life, and I've become very curious about learning about ADHD. But when I found your profile on Instagram, I was like, oh, thank fucking God. Because there's a lot of people talking about ADHD and there's a lot of people talking about sex. And until we had our prep call, I didn't realize how all of those things checked into place with each other.
Yeah, and you're right. Everyone's talking about ADHD, which I think is great.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome that we're living in a time now where there's so much information for us to latch onto. Yes. And yes, you're right. Then you have that other topic of sex, but it's like, okay, but why aren't we talking about relationships? Why aren't we talking about intimacy? Because when you talk about sexuality, sexuality is who we are. Sex is what we do or may not do, depends on your preference. But like, it's a whole. So our relationships, how are they showing up?
Yeah.
And no one's talking about it. No one wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole, in my personal opinion. I think that's what it is. It's a struggle. We live in a very censorship like environment just in general.
Yes.
But there is a huge connection when you look at it.
Yeah. So personally, what for you were some of the light bulb things that started shifting?
Well, when I was trying to be intimate with my partner, I had my own insecurities at the time, so I always thought it was just that.
Right.
But then as I got diagnosed with ADHD and I started understanding and reading about it, and through my certification and my continued research, I really tapped into sensory. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. The next time I tried to have sex with my partner, I was like, why am I disconnected here? Total silence. The silence itself was overstimulating. I just it was like cringe. And you're not actively participating in what's going on around me. You're just focusing and trying to be intimate, right?
Right.
But silence itself really fucked with me. And because of that, I couldn't be connected with my partner. And I just wanted to be over. Like, it was just like, okay, let's get it over with.
Do the deed.
Do the deed, get it done with, right? The second I realized that, I was able to set my environment up for success. And that's my mantra for all my clients. It's about setting your environment, your relationship, and your sex up for success. So music goes on, but it gets even more complicated than that. Because like, it can't be something like Mumford and Sons or something else, because then I'm going to be too much involved. I'm going to hyperfixate on that and then not my partner. So just saying that out loud, like, it can get exhausting. Yeah. And so part of our ADHD is, accepting it, but you have to grieve it. Like, that is huge. Like,
grieving the what?
The diagnosis that you're going to have to put the work in. Yeah. Like, think of mental health. You go to a therapist, you have anxiety, depression, you're talking, you're learning, you're implementing things. Right. The second you slack off, what ends up happening? You revert backwards. Same thing goes for ADHD. You constantly have to be showing up, which in itself is exhausting because we already are depleted with our energy for the most part because it's going to 3 million other things. So it can be very hard. And so a lot of my clients, while they can come to me for short term, they like to stay longer for those management pieces, and then they go like monthly or bi-monthly just to keep checking in and making sure they're continuing those setups for their environment and being mindful of how their ADHD is showing up for them.
Accountability is so important, and I'm sure a lot of other ADHD people can relate. I got all excited about this thing, and I booked a call, and I bought the course, and then nothing. Didn't do the course, didn't do the follow-up, didn't do any of the things we talked about on the coaching call. And I reached out to the woman today, and I was like, can I pay you for daily voice notes and check-ins? Because that's what I need to implement a new habit when it comes to my relationship with food. And like, that's what I need.
But that's awesome that you were advocating for yourself and you recognized it.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't. And so to really then understand it, I'm going to just shift really quickly and give an idea of like what ADHD even is for everybody to hear. So ADHD is attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And a lot of people think that there's 3 types of ADHD, but that's actually not true. There's only one type. It's ADHD. It presents differently in 3 different presentations. So we have hyperactive, inattentive, and combined. So the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Manual for Mental Health, they changed the wording back in like 2012. And what they did was they switched types to presentations. Because what we found in research is that people can present differently across lifespan. So we're seeing children start off more hyperactive in their presentation. And as they're aging into adolescence and adulthood, we see a shift. We see a shift into the inattention type or the combined type. And then as adults, women, menses, hormones, you can fluctuate daily. You can fluctuate weekly, yearly. And so it's presentation. And this is another reason why comparing yourself to other people with ADHD, it's a death sentence. Don't do it. Because everyone's going to be different. And with ADHD, it's an executive functioning disorder. So what that means is we have 7 executive functioning, or the main ones at least. There is inhibition, which is like that impulse control. Self-awareness. Self-awareness. You have nonverbal and verbal working memory. You have emotion regulation, motivation regulation, and then planning and problem solving. For us ADHDers, shot to shit. Total deficit.
All of it?
It's a deficit, 100%.
Oh.
And all of that is in the front part of our brains.
It's a deficit of all of those executive functioning.
It's a struggle. Yes, it is. We don't process in a typical fashion. So that's all in the front of the brain. So if you're looking at the brain, you have the back and the front. I'm being very like simplistic with this.
Please. We're kinky sex people.
I know. I won't get too nerdy, I promise.
This is great. Thank you.
So for ADHD, it's a performance disorder. It's not a knowledge disorder. Like, we're smart. We know the no, smart. Right? Like, we know the no. We know what we need to do. And I have clients that come to me and they're like, Leann, logically, I know. I know I need to do this. But then I can't do it.
There's self-awareness, but like the initiation and then the discipline is really difficult for us.
The performance. Correct. So when you're looking at the brain, the back part of the brain is the knowledge. The front part is the performance. There is a disconnect from the knowledge to the performance. So for a neurotypical, you have the no. Okay, cool. Goes to the front.
I'm going to do the thing.
Yep. You got it. For us,
that'd be so great.
I know, right? There's a disconnect. So when people tell you, "Oh, here's some tools," right?
Oh God, I hate the
coaches
even
do this. And I'm not saying anything bad about coaches. There's some awesome coaches out there. But when someone's teaching you
the tools,
exactly, you don't need more knowledge. You don't need more knowledge. It's not a knowledge disorder. It's a performance disorder.
Fascinating. I like this.
So
I like this.
The thing that research says works is something called behavioral therapy, where what you want to do is you want to create artificial motivators in your environment. So physical cues. So my daughter struggles immensely with closing kitchen cabinets. And I know that that's an ADHD thing. And it's funny because like you walk into the kitchen and you know she was there. Post-it notes in the environment helps her say, okay, wait, I have to close the cabinet doors, because her brain isn't registering and remembering physical cue. So this is really important because without them, we may not be able to function. So it's really important to remember that. And it goes back to why then setting your environment, your relationship, and your sex up for success is so vital because you need to create the artificial motivators in the environment to succeed as an ADHDer.
And by artificial motivators, can we also look at that as like gamification in a certain way?
I mean, yeah, you can create...
Because that's what I find myself doing.
So explain exactly what you do then.
So this is something my therapist helped me with. I was like, okay, I do this thing where I'll start going to the gym and I'll do it for 2 days in a row and then I fall off. And she's like, well, what if we have your fun podcast that's only for the treadmill when you're walking fast on the treadmill. And so every time you're going to the treadmill, you're catching up on a new episode of this podcast. So there's like these little things that I'm starting to implement that make it feel more like fun and more novel.
Rewarding too.
Yeah, rewarding. There's a good word.
Yeah, like it's like the Togen system, but for pods, you know?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people that go to the gym in particular, just as a side note, the research shows that if you aren't actually enjoying something within the first 10 to 15 seconds, your motivation to continue to do it falls short. So the afterglow of a gym, of like how you feel really good, like you know how people say that all the time?
Keeping me going back.
No.
I feel so fucking great when I leave the gym and I think, I can't wait to do this again tomorrow.
How do you feel going into it?
I don't want to do this. Why do I have to do this? This
exactly.
sucks.
So your brain isn't calculating, I want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so now matched with ADHD, it becomes super hard to find the reward there. But if you are changing your environment to at least give you more concentration, attention into areas that you're like, okay, I like this, especially music, you're creating protective barriers for yourself to complete them the task.
Actually, Millie and I were talking about this last night. We watch a lot of true crime and I'm like, I can get pretty hyper fixated. I think it's a thing with true crime stuff, but like, I bet that could be a way that I could go into the gym.
Yeah.
Because I really do get lost in specific types of content. So,
and that's really interesting that you say that because what you're talking about is taking your symptom of hyperfixation and putting it in a positive way. Right?
Yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah.
You're kicking ass.
We're learning.
I love it. Yeah.
And I think I also have a tendency to make things can be very bingey for me, whether it's money or food or alcohol or sex. And so like, I really am trying to work on some health stuff right now because I have some autoimmune issues, but not being like, none of this, just like, okay, I love eating, a pint of ice cream every night. Well, what does that look like if I can make a fruit salad and put yogurt in it and like not go so restrictive? Because I feel like that's an ADHD thing too, to be very black and white.
It is. And for a lot of women in particular with ADHD, we are more likely to experience eating disorders, specifically binge eating disorder. I mean, there's a variety of things that happen in our childhood, being a neurodivergent and not knowing, and all the things that come up that we're people pleasers. That's in a nutshell. We learn to people please because we are not meeting the environment the way that they're telling us we need to. So
and we're kind of faking it. Like we're
masking.
Yes. Yes.
And you learn, okay, well, to succeed, I have to make everyone around me happy.
So masking just isn't a thing for people that are on the autism spectrum.
No.
For ADHD.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. 100%.
And what is masking for those?
So masking is pretending like you have your shit together when you don't and trying to be something you're not.
Yeah.
So trying to force eye contact if you're not somebody that can make eye contact. So like if you've noticed in our interview already, I've been looking that way occasionally because to help me process.
Right. I do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine though.
Yeah.
That's who you are.
It's not wrong, but
no, it's not. I mean,
but being a podcast host, like I've gotten better at eye contact, but like I'm doing it right now. I'm looking over here to actually process it.
Yeah. So it's trying to force yourself to do something that you're not actually equipped necessarily to do. And what ends up happening through masking is if you're using all the energy to try and stop your symptoms from being seen in public, you're depleted of energy. That leads to that anxiety, the stress, and then also depression, low self-esteem. It's a downward spiral.
I was using alcohol for years to feel comfortable in settings that now, as a sober person, can be in for 30 minutes and then I'm out of there.
And on top of that, ADHDs are common to have substance use issues,
yes,
hypersexuality.
We're doing a lot of comforting. That's what I find myself doing is I feel like so much of my energy has been expended throughout the day. And in the evenings, I feel kind of burned out. And that's where the cravings to self-soothe come into play.
Yeah. And you know that, though.
Yes.
And so what you can do is...
I'm very self-aware, but wish I could do things about it. But
that goes back to the performance, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but the fact that you're able to recognize, understand, and advocate for yourself is honestly amazing for anyone to be able to do with ADHD.
Yeah. I'm so glad I got diagnosed and got clear on it because my mental health was really struggling. And I love learning about myself. I'm trying to think of some of like the most light bulb things that I've seen you post or talk about. But even on our call, when you said like the silence is overwhelming, like I'd never thought about that before, but I find so much white noise comforting. The dishwasher, the washing machine, the fan, and like, I found sexual encounters in silence to feel more awkward and disconnected than if I make my environment like sexy and put on music that again does not have words, but that's like sexy, sexy kind of lo-fi music, some candles. So I think, could you share a little bit about sensory with autism versus ADHD? Because as I started realizing how much sensory sensitivity I have, I started questioning my diagnosis as well. So I'm curious.
So there is a lot of crossover with autism and ADHD. And even with autism, it's on a spectrum. So everyone is going to present differently. But in terms of sensory, it's really up to the individual and your chemistry in your brain. Because ADHD is a neurological disorder. So it's how you're hardwired, what's going on up there. And that's going to determine like the sensory issues. So when you say is like there a difference, technically not. It depends on the presentation. So there are people that can be overstimulated by like touch. Certain foods they can't eat because just the sensory of it is just too much. Brushing teeth is one of the biggest issues with ADHDers because it's a sensory it's overstimulating and it makes them feel very uncomfortable. So hygiene of the mouth, oral hygiene is a huge issue for ADHDers.
I don't love brushing my teeth.
Neither does my daughter. She's going to kill me. But yes, it's very, very common.
Wow. Okay. What else? What else is hard for me?
Certain lotions, certain products you're not going to be able to possibly use. Your hair can cause oversensitivity. That's why like when I travel, I have to have my hair back. I can't have it in front of me. Sounds, certain sounds can just like leave you go, oh gosh, that's gross. The taste too can be overstimulating. But when we're talking about the bedroom, I actually had a client that came to me once and they were like, I can't connect. I'm just always thinking of the dishes and my chores and what I need to do. And first session we had together and I said, so why don't you just do the dishes? She's like, wait, what? And I'm like, just do the dishes. If that's all you're thinking of and it's causing you to hyperfixate and that be part of it, okay, go do it. And then I had another client that, like certain sheets, how like they'll wrinkle and they'll tighten up.
Oh, yep.
This feeds
Don't
into
love
that.
those either.
No, it doesn't, right? So a client, there was a couple that came in and she's like, I can't, like the wrinkle in the sheets, it feels weird on my body.
Oh my God, the guy's probably like, what? That's why we're not having sex?
And then she's like, I just want to straighten the sheet. And I say, so take the sheets off. Take the sheets off. Is the mattress okay to lay on? And they were like, yeah, I guess. You could do that? Yes, it's that simple, but not. Like you're not thinking about how your sensory issues come up in the bedroom and such easy ways to change it. But
Wow. That's fascinating. I find that I really love sex, and I think it's become such a big part of my life because I find it easier to be present with sex and connection in that way. Where, sure, during initiation, the beginning of a sexual experience, I can be going through the list of things that I need to do or what's going on in my life. But in general, I find it a place where I can kind of hyperfixate and be really present and focused on my partner and my pleasure.
And that's interesting you say that.
Yeah.
Because what you just said was it's a task.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't like when I say this.
Yeah.
But sex is a task. And we ADHDers really struggle with task initiation.
Right.
And I don't think it's in any literature. I've tried to find it, but I call it sex paralysis. And what I like to say is like, think of like walking into a messy room.
Yeah.
And there's just shit everywhere.
Yeah.
You don't know where to start. And what do we usually do? We're like, okay, no, thank
bye.
you. And you walk away.
Yes.
Sex can be the exact same thing. If it's overstimulating, understimulating, you're not reaching orgasms, your pleasure isn't, at the forefront of it. There's too much to do. Your brain starts calculating all of that without you even recognizing it, and you just shut down from it. And you don't want to participate. And so then those that do force themselves to participate in sex when they don't want to, you're creating like a pancake stack of just distress, disconnect, and it's just over and over and over again.
And then a negative association with sex.
100%. And that's what my clients have to begin to unlearn.
Yeah.
And what's problematic is that the typical way to try and re-engage in sex when you've become disconnected, either because of performance anxiety, low desire, whatever you want to use, sensate focus is like the intervention in our field.
What is?
Sensate focus.
Sensate?
Yeah. Okay. So it's concentrating on all the sensations that are happening, right? So temperature, touch, sound, taste, feeling a person's body. That's all cool. But if you have ADHD and you struggle with sensory, sensate focus isn't neurodivergent in its approach. It's very neurotypical. So then you have to take this approach and try to redo it and make it yours. So this is what I help my clients do. Like I say, hey, how is your ADHD showing up? We literally have to take like the anatomy of your ADHD, your environment, what's going on, and then figure out what do we need to change to make it set up for your success. And that's kind of how sex becomes pleasurable again, through education, through change of your environment. It's those artificial motivators in the environment. Think of it like a ramp, right? We have a disability. People don't like to use that word, but I like to call a spade a spade. It is a disability. And like somebody in a wheelchair who needs a ramp to get into an establishment or an environment, us ADHDers need those ramps. Without them, we're not gaining access. So it's important our ramps are always there. And that's where that continued work is always needed for us to then be able to show up and have amazing sex and enjoy it.
Yeah. And I feel like without a ramp, there's a lot of burnout and mental health.
Yeah.
And those unhealthy dopamine seeking and chasing things become more extreme. Like the way that I kind of envision my ADHD is I'm rarely like this in my life. And I'm either slowly headed upwards or downwards with my patterns and my habits. And without doing the work, without being in therapy, for me, medication, like without these things, it's usually the downward trajectory.
But medication is really helpful. And, and you have to decide as an individual what is going to work for you. But we do know that medication works for ADHD because it's hitting those neurological things. Because again, we're not stupid. We can take as much knowledge as you're willing to give us, but it's the how do we get there? And the medication helps us get there. And what's interesting, too, is I'm doing a lot of research because I'm currently working on my dissertation right now on BDSM.
Amazing. My favorite. Love it.
Yes. Because all the literature that's out there now shows and suggests that BDSM is being done with more individuals with autism than the general population. And so, okay, we take a look at the why, right? So BDSM, explicit information. You're communicating. You don't have to guess. You don't have to, rely on social cues. None of that. Like, it's said. It's good. Sensory.
Direct.
Yeah, sensory. If you're overstimulated, there's so many things that can happen, right? You have the start, the finish. You create scenes. And even within BDSM, though, even though we know that a lot of neurodivergent individuals are partaking, there's no literature on ADHD. None whatsoever.
The literature on
BDSM and ADHD. What about us ADHDers? How
but
can
there
it
is
help?
literature on autism and BDSM.
Yeah, not enough. Not enough.
Of course.
But we are getting better in the field.
Because there's such a direct correlation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you really think about it, it's communication. You don't have to guess. But even like, for instance, if you create a scene with BDSM, you know, us ADHDers, and this is why research is really needed, because we struggle with something called time blindness. So time blindness is when you literally are not able to perceive time.
That's me in the studio. No fucking clue, because I'm so focused. I'm serious. No idea.
Exactly. Time can go by so quickly. You're not recognizing it. So like, let's say you want to do rope play and you designate it and say, okay, we want to do like 15 minutes of rope play. You may, not be able to pay attention to the time, but you also may utilize the time needed to set up. So maybe if you think like, oh, it's going to take me 10 minutes to set up, and like an hour later, your partner's like, what the hell is going on? I'm just ready for this. So setting your environment even up in BDSM to match our needs as an ADHDer is really important. And that's what I hope to discover with the continued research that I'm going to do on BDSM and ADHD.
Yeah. If you know me and you watch the podcast, you know that I like watching porn for my self-pleasure rituals. One of my favorite websites to go to is exoafterglow.com. What I have found with mainstream porn is that a lot of it is created for the male gaze. It's a lot about the man's pleasure, and it just doesn't feel super authentic and connected. What I really love about Afterglow is that it is for everyone, and it is founded by a woman. I've actually had the pleasure of working with her here in Austin, and I love their mission. You can also find educational porn on their website called EduPorn, and there is just so much to learn and watch there. So go to exoafterglow.com and use code EXOTHEA. As you guys know, I've been very curious about anal play with my male partners, and I'm really excited to share Butter with you guys. Butter Wellness makes men's sexual health and wellness products, including this perineum massager. This applied on the perineum, which is between the ass and the penis of a man, can create prostate orgasms, which are very, very intense orgasms. In addition to that, this tool can also create extra blood flow that goes to the pelvic region. So if anybody has any issues with ED, this can also support with that. This is not to be inserted. This is for external use only. And you can get 20% off by going to butterwellness.com and use code SEGGS, SEGGS. My favorite Honey Playbox sex toy has to be the Joy Thrust. What is so cool about this toy is that this part vibrates and thrusts, which stimulates the G-spot, and this end stimulates the clitoris. Their products cover a massive, wide variety of experiences and desires, and the majority of them are app-enabled. So in addition to the buttons on the toys, you can adjust the intensity of the toy on an app on your phone, which makes for really fun, spicy playtime. If you're curious about trying out app-enabled sex toys, go to honeyplaybox.com and use code SEGGS, SEGGS, for 20% off of your entire order. So what kind of things are you exploring in your dissertation?
Right now, it's specifically trying to prove that BDSM is a place that ADHDers are using and utilizing. And I would like to then take it a step further and see if their pleasure, their intimacy is more satisfying than those that are not. Because BDSM, you're able to communicate in a way that you're not doing outside of it. Communication is key. I know everyone hates to communicate. It's uncomfortable.
Especially with sex.
You don't want to do it.
Gotta practice it.
You do. But with BDSM, it's almost like you're able to practice the vulnerability and you're constantly checking in with one another.
Yes.
And
if done in a correct, healthy way.
100%. There are people that do not practice.
I've also had shitty experiences with BDSM experienced people.
And there are people that don't partake in BDSM the way it's supposed to be. Yes. And that's problematic. 100%. I agree. Yeah. But when it is done correctly and you are communicating and you have consent and everyone's happy and healthy.
Safe words.
Exactly.
Signs. Yeah.
You're able to really enjoy it and it becomes transactional. And we know in research that transactional type sex leads to more orgasms and more pleasure. Because we look at lesbian couples, they're having so many more orgasms. And, and that's not to say that lesbian couples struggle with orgasms as well, because ADHD, again, still shows up, regardless of who you're having sex with. But that transactional piece is huge.
What do you mean by transactional? Because I think of monetary. But.
So think of like heterosexual sex and how it's set up. Usually you have a little foreplay, you fool around, penetration, man ejaculates, bada boom, we're done, right? That's a start to finish.
Transactional is mutually.
Yeah, mutually. Like you're going back and forth with one another. You're exploring each other's bodies. You're really taking the time with one another. Heterosexual sex really isn't set up that way.
It's not what we grow up viewing either at all.
And for heterosexual couples who have ADHD, specifically like a woman, take that people-pleasing part. You bring that into the bedroom. I can't even tell you how many women come to me and tell me that they're not having orgasms or their pleasure is not there and that they just don't want to hurt their partner. They want their partner to be happy. And then their partner comes in and their partner's saying the exact same thing. And I'm like, people, let's make each other happy. You know, but it's unlearning that people-pleasing tendency that, you know, I got to show up and make sure you are pleased.
No, I had massive... Like when I first started exploring as a more submissive person, like it was a lot of people pleasing and unhealthy situations and really feeling shame about like needing a toy to come and just like it was this sexual experience curated for the man, for the other person. And then also being in the more submissive role is a very vulnerable thing to explore that now I'm very picky about who I give that to. But having explored my more dominant side recently, it's like I really feel like I'm taking my power back.
That's awesome.
And
I love hearing that.
Fucking awesome.
I love
it.
Awesome.
Highly recommend for any people pleasers and just anybody that's exploring submission. Like it's fun to play around with both sides. And so, I feel like I'm really finding my power and my voice. And it's so cool to even just like virtually connect or start messaging with a more submissive man because I'm so standing up for my needs. Like, hey, I'd like you to come over. Please be here at 7.
And don't you feel sexier and more empowered and confident because you are showing up for yourself? You're not like giving all your oxygen and air to everyone else. You are finally breathing it in and you're actually able to then take action with it. And that's the beauty of psychology. It is all just a shift in how we're showing up. And what you were talking about too, about like how his pleasure, right? There's something called an orgasm gap. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Oh, yes, girl.
And it's a real thing. And it's, you know, I was reading a paper recently and it was on ADHD and sexuality. And a lot of the women were saying how they're having orgasms and they're okay and this and that. And I really struggled because then we have other literature that's saying not so much with penetration, that clitoral stimulation is so important. And so then I really started to tap in and say to myself, okay, well, are we lying? Are we lying on these studies? Because all these are self-reports, right? Because a lot of women that come to me, they don't want to admit that they're not having orgasms.
It's a difficult thing to break through and share.
100%.
Or maybe they're not even totally aware. I've had a lot of people come to me and say they think they're having orgasms. And I'm like, probably not.
You'll know when you have an orgasm.
I think there's a lot of shame there. And then there's a lot of thinking there's something wrong with their body. That was definitely something I experienced. And then when I saw the research on the pleasure gap, I was like, I need everyone to know this. Even
like bringing a toy into your intimacy and your play. Like vibrators, people are like, oh, I remember when I was a sex toy consultant back in the day when I was still going to school. I would like try to advertise and I would get the same answer. I have a partner. I don't need one. I was like,
whoa.
What? Everyone needs one. What are you talking about, right?
It's a teammate is what everyone likes to say. I like to say it.
And when you think about it too, like for instance, you know, I personally, I'm not the biggest fan of penetration. And the research shows my anatomy doesn't actually really get much out of penetration. It's all external stimulation. I do it because my husband likes it. And I want him to be happy too. But when you involve a vibrator, it helps the penis because the penis is feeling vibration. You're feeling vibration. You can have so much fun with a vibrator
and you're going to want to have more sex with him if you're coming every fucking time or whenever you would like to.
But it's interesting you say that. Because us ADHDers, that could be overstimulating for us. Having multiple orgasms.
Oh, in like one time? Oh, yeah, that doesn't happen for me often.
But if it does, it can be overstimulating.
Sure.
100%.
And sometimes vibrators and those things can be overstimulating too. Like I was talking about it with my last guest, like there's some times where now that I can use my voice, I also say things like, I don't really actually, it's not super important for me in this sexual experience to have an orgasm. So like, let's focus on you. But I can voice these things, whereas I used to, I would have just almost forced an orgasm or done the thing to make the person happy.
And what you're talking about is because you can communicate, you're able to show up and have a good time for yourself. And that not every time is going to be the same. And that's especially true with sensation in whether you're doing BDSM or anything else. Every single time is going to be different. So like, like I said before, certain music might be okay today.
Right.
But other music, if you're trying to put it on in the bedroom, may be too much. It's really dependent on how much energy you've given in your day and where you're at when you're showing up in the bedroom with your partner.
Right. Is there a correlation, or could you explain the correlation between, and maybe even go a step further as to like what dopamine and serotonin are and how ADHD people are kind of like seeking out those experiences? Because I think there's probably also a correlation between our desire to take risks and seek out novel experiences and have more like ties to BDSM.
So to break that up, so your dopamine is your reward and the pleasure system, basically. Serotonin is that happy hormone, right?
Serotonin's more like consistent,
right? Yeah, 100%. And so for us, it's a deficit in the dopamine. So we're constantly, it's not like we don't have attention. We have a lot of attention. We just struggle to focus and keep it maintained, especially if it's not of interest. If it's of interest, we could possibly do that, and we then can become hyper-focused. But generally, we struggle to stay on task, if you will. In regards to that risk factor, that also has to do with inhibition. Impulse control. So
executive function.
There you go. Look at you. So when we're talking about dopamine, there is literature out there on dopamine and how it is associated with riskier behavior. I mean, when you're looking up, let's say, hypersexuality, the research currently on hypersexuality keeps saying the same things. We know that ADHDers are more likely to have riskier sexual behavior, getting pregnant at younger ages, increases in STIs and STDs, and it's all associated with possibly dopamine. So there are 5 different dopamine receptors in our brain, and dopamine D4 is associated with that impulse control and that desire and the pleasure seeking. And what they have started to see, and again, we need so much research, but what they started to see is that individuals with ADHD that have higher levels of D4, they're having higher levels of hypersexuality. Higher levels of riskier sexual behaviors.
Where do I get it tested? Where do I get the D4 test?
But so dopamine, serotonin, all these things. And that's why medication management can be very helpful, because the medication is targeting those receptors and they're helping regulate a dysregulation that's occurring in the brain.
Yeah. And just a note on that, like when I first went on medication in college for anxiety, I didn't tell anyone. Like it was a secretive, shameful thing. And I remember like it felt like this coming out process of sharing it with people. And I just think it's important for people and women listening or watching to know that like it's not like you have failed and now you need this thing, or you have done something and now you need this thing. Like our brains are literally in a deficit.
Yeah, it's the ramp.
It's chemical.
Yeah, it's the ramp. But that goes back to the grief part. You know, again, we grow up in a neurotypical world. We're told what we should be. And so when we're later diagnosed, our whole world gets thrown upside down at us. And even sex, even in our relationships, we're striving for the neurotypical way, like how things need or should be. And if we're not showing up, we're shameful of it because that's what we've been taught from a very young age. You know, you're not doing your homework. Oh, you're lazy. You're not cleaning your room. Oh, you don't value a nice, clean space. Like such shame that we learn that follows us immensely. And it's sad because a lot of the work that clients have to do is unlearning this. So like people come to you, they want sex to be good, but you need to feel your feelings. You need to relearn how to really interact with people yourself, giving yourself grace and allowing yourself to realize that like you are who you are, and it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. That's so true.
You're welcome.
That was beautiful. I mean, it's Yeah, giving yourself grace. So, I mean, for example, even after podcast days, I've done like 4 hours basically back to back of conversations, and that's a lot for me. And I still like wish I was the type that could like then go get, dinner with you as a guest or like something like that. But it's like, I have to go home and take care of myself. Yeah. I have to put on the comfy big t-shirt, get food delivered, and I have to advocate and take care of myself. And once I understood my diagnosis, as I continue to still understand it, I have more self-love and almost like humor with myself.
Yep.
Of like, nope, can't get food because I got to go home and stare at a wall for the rest of the night.
And that's awesome. I love that. Because it's so true though.
Right.
You're advocating. That's something we didn't have when we were growing up. We didn't have the understanding to advocate for ourselves.
No one understood.
And now we do. Like rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Oh God, let's talk about that one.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
I mean, I know what it is, but what is that for the public?
Not all ADHDers experience it. And I think that's important to note because some people are like, well, I don't have that, so I must not have ADHD, because it is talked a lot now about.
Right.
And again, good thing.
Yeah.
But don't compare. But RSD is whenever we like pick up on any type of possible criticism or rejection, we will like literally go from 1 to 100 where we could like seem batshit crazy because of how our emotion dysregulation sets in.
And emotion dysregulation or emotion regulation that's also one of the
the 7 executive functionings. We struggle.
Fuck.
Yeah, I know, right?
What a mess.
But it's a beautiful mess.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
We're also like really successful and awesome and creative. So
there you go. Using it to your strengths, which is what we have to do, right? So with RSD, with me in particular, I've learned my husband, he's such a wonderful man. Shout out to my husband.
Yeah.
We make a joke about it because like if he's saying something and I think that he's criticizing me, I will get like recluse, but not like recluse
kinda
where
shut down.
I do, but like I get like sassy with it a little bit. Like I'm just like, right? My turnaround time now is about like 2 minutes, 5 minutes. It could be 15 minutes, but I'll come back around and be like, oh my God, babe, I'm so sorry. That was my RSD. He's like, yeah, that was your RSD.
What's an example of you feeling rejected, I guess?
So it could be me telling him about my day and
not getting like
what I'm expecting because my husband also has ADHD.
Okay.
So I am impulsive with my need to tell him about everything and anything, which isn't fair to him because he may be thinking of something completely separate and I just show up and I'm like, da-da-da-da-da, and I expect him to talk to me.
Oh my God.
And so he gives me what he has and I then feel like, oh, well, I guess you don't like what I'm saying.
Or you don't care about my day.
You don't care. Fine. Bye. Like,
so it's not just like sexual or romantic rejection, I think is the important distinction here because I didn't really know that.
Yeah. I mean, RSD shows up in the bedroom. You get in your head a lot as an ADHDer, especially since we know a lot of us have self-esteem issues growing up, just from the interaction that we had growing up. And so, like, if my husband was to touch my stomach, which was a really bad place for me a long time ago, I've thankfully learned to be empowered with my body. Granted, I have my moments still. I think we all do.
Of course.
But like if he would touch me on my stomach, I automatically went to all of the bullying that happened back in the day. And it almost felt like, oh my God, you're going to think I'm horrible. You're rejecting me. You're not going to love me.
Wow.
And I just would shut down. And that's how my RSD would show up.
And so a neurotypical person would be able to regulate their emotional reaction to that experience a bit better.
They probably would, depending on the severity of their insecurity. Okay. Because what ends up happening is if you have an insecurity that's attached to your RSD, on top of that, it can be amplified for us because then we can also become hyperfixated on it.
So fucking damn it.
So in like for neurotypicals, like let's say an insecurity comes up. Okay, let's say their partner understands it. Okay, it's okay. Calm down. You do whatever you need to do to like
They can reset faster.
Oh my God, I hate them.
I know.
I love them.
They can recalibrate from emotional dysregulation faster sometimes.
Yes.
And I'll be like it used to, before I did a lot of personal development and therapy, it would, anything that was like, I think a rejection sensitivity thing, I would be thrown off for a full 24 hours. I would need a full sleep to wake up and be shifted.
And that is very possible for some people where it can affect you. It can ruin your day.
Yeah.
That's it. You're done. You're done. And it's almost like hyperfixation. You're hyper-focused and fixated on the emotion that has come up, which is criticism and rejection in a nutshell. And it's really hard. And challenging RSD in real time is really only the way to try and manage it.
Okay.
But that's really hard to do.
Yeah,
because now what you're doing is
because you're in a very triggered state.
Yeah.
Yeah, something I've been navigating lately is in 1 year going from successful CEO business coach as like how I was viewed to the sex podcast girl. And it's actually made dating really strange. And so my rejection sensitivity stuff comes up when it's like, I mean, so basically I used to have like G-sized breasts and I've had a reduction. And so in my teen years and early adulthood and college, I was sexualized. It was the girl that they want to have sex with, but not date or marry. And now I feel like I'm back in that category, and I'm actually in real time putting these two things together right now of like, there's so much trigger that comes up when people realize I have the podcast and I'm put in this, like the Madonna whore thing. I'm put in like the whore category of, oh, I bet I could have cool, fun, kinky sex with her, but like she's not wife or dating material. And so I project a lot of that onto men, though, if I sense any of that, which it might not even be accurate, but it'll be like, they'll ask me a question about the podcast or about sex, and it's instantly like, you only want to have sex. Like it's all this other stuff comes up. So I have a lot to work through with that.
But that actually is interesting you say that, because that's exactly what happens with me with my stomach, or it used to happen more, because growing up, I was the fat girl. Right? And as I got into older years and I was having sex, I was never the girl that you would want to date, but I was okay to have sex with. So anytime my quote fatness comes up, I get triggered, because you're talking about memories. Memories are not just things you can recall. It's a body memory, and it floods you. And it feels like you're back at the day that it happened. And so that's where, for us ADHDers, it's not just now flooding. You can become hyperfixated on it and hyperfocus, and you're actually strengthening the memory even further because you're staying in it for so long because of that hyperfixating on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to touch on is the kind of media society representation of ADHD and how kind of wonky it is, because I had no idea I had it. And also the kind of gender discrepancy here, because my reference point for it growing up in the 90s was it's boys in class that can't focus. That is what AD. They're bouncing off the walls. They're interrupting. They're arguing. They're loud, they're funny, and it's this specific archetype, and it is a boy, and he cannot fucking focus. I mean, I built my first company and sold it by 30, and I was like doing a lot of shit, and I didn't think that ADHD people like were success. Like there were just all these I'd made up all these things. And so it really, I mean, I literally landed on ADHD TikTok before I had any inkling that I had it. At all. And TikTok fucking knew before I did, because I'd made up
that algorithm.
I know.
They're always listening.
Because I had made up what it was, which was that it was a person that actually just like can't focus.
But that wasn't something you fabricated. That was something you learned growing up.
Totally.
Yeah.
Fuck
100%.
I remember the one ADHD kid in my class, and he was literally bouncing off the walls.
I mean, Instagram, social media, whatever, you have a lot of awesome people and experts on these, but you also then have the people that are spewing information that's not correct.
Yes.
And when I work with clients, I tell them, hey, I may not be your cup of tea. And if I'm not, make sure who you're going to truly specializes in ADHD, because it isn't something you can just go on Wikipedia. No. You can't just read a few articles. Like, you really need to understand it. You know, journals are still saying that there are 3 types of ADHD. You have coaches and therapists out there on social media saying there's 3 types. We haven't used that word in X amount of years, since like 2012, 2013.
That's wild.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's really important that if you do have ADHD, that you are truly getting your information from reputable sources, going to someone who's specialized in it, who's going to not teach you tools. You don't need tools.
I don't want another fucking tool.
That's exhausting, right?
So when if I have a session with like a coach or somebody that's not at all ADHD related, all I see as they're talking, all I hear are list items.
And we're not very happy with lists. We would love a good list.
But
for me, I don't like lists. because they are never ending.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of my failures.
It makes me feel inadequate because I haven't done all the things.
Yeah.
Never caught up on my list.
My husband's the exact same
The fact
way.
that nobody in my family knew I had this shit when I was making lists as a child and like cleaning other people's rooms for fun, like insane. But kind of going back to that media representation of it, I think it's important to just let people know that it's not always the kid that can't, or the person that can't focus, that has the messy room, that's disorganized, that's late. In fact, I'm actually extremely always early and on time, and I am very organized, and I can't focus unless things are a certain way.
The structure piece. And also keep in mind, females represent a little differently than males do. So for females, we're more internal with our symptoms. So ours is more of like the anxiety, the racing thoughts, the irritability. Headaches are also very prone for individuals with ADHD.
Our brain's about to fucking catch on fire.
Right? Yeah. GI issues are also associated with ADHD in more females than males. Because
anxiety and GI are very related.
Yeah, you're talking about the nervous system and stress and cortisol that's attached to it, because we're all more internal. That's not to say that there are females that don't also external, but it isn't.
That's also societal conditioning too, though. I mean, it's not okay to present that way. The interrupting, the disrespectful, all these things as a child, as a woman.
Yeah, you're told that you have to have your stuff together, right? You're not allowed to do that, right? That's boys are boys. I always love that sentence, right? Boys will be boys, right? But that's what we're told. So I think you're onto something there. And I don't think research has done enough look into the social aspects of why there's differences between females and males when we're talking about ADHD. But I truly do believe that there are reinforcers in our environment that tells us that we have to internalize everything.
Yes.
And to take it a step further, there are a lot of people that are misdiagnosed with ADHD, specifically, I'm sure you've heard ADD, right? That word gets thrown around.
Yeah, what is the difference?
So ADD was a term used for attention deficit disorder instead of including the hyperactive piece. And about 30 to 50% of individuals have been misdiagnosed with it. And instead of it being ADD, it's actually something called sluggish cognitive tempo, which has been changed to cognitive disengagement syndrome. It's individuals that are literally like in the clouds. Yeah. Like you're sluggish, you're daydreaming a lot, you have more of the anxiety piece. It's not ADHD. It's just another attention disorder.
So does ADD is no longer a thing that is diagnosed?
No.
Not really?
No. The diagnostic tool, DSM-5, doesn't have ADD in there anymore. It's ADHD.
Now, those people, I think I know some. And are they the people that are a bit more aloof? They're late. They have a lot of creative ideas, but they don't enact on them?
Yeah, they're sluggish. They're just it's hard to pick up. And you're always sleeping maybe, or you always look like you're daydreaming. Like in the clouds mentality. Yeah. Like you're not there, but you're there, right? That is that sluggish cognitive tempo. And a lot of people still call it that, but it's now been changed. And it's not considered an actual disorder yet in the DSM-5. So we have a lot to still add.
There's a lot to learn.
Yes. A lot. I mean, a lot of what we see in research with ADHD hasn't been updated in the DSM. You know, so.
Wow. So what else have you kind of hacked or learned as you work with clients with ADHD when it comes to sex?
So one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of women with ADHD struggle immensely with low desire.
Okay.
So not wanting to show up in the bedroom, but wanting to. Like they want sex, but they don't want sex.
They want sex.
Exactly. Okay. And from my experience, so this isn't like factual. This is just from my experience working with my clients. A lot of the women that I'm seeing, they have children, or they're married, or they're with partners, and they're taking on a lot of chores, a lot of tasks in their day. They're working. They're also then picking up
to-do lists that feel never ending.
Yeah, 100%. And they're also just not receiving the type of pleasure that they want. They're taught this narrative of what sex should look like as a woman, as a straight woman. That's just not in line with their actual anatomy. So a lot of the times when a person comes to me and they're like, I want to have sex. I don't want to not be with my partner, but like, Leann, I can't. Like, I just can't show up.
Or initiate, or like what's the word?
Start it up, right? Start it up. One of the things that I've noticed for a lot of people that deal with this is most people are trying to have sex at the end of your day.
especially ADHD. Okay, by the end of my fucking day, I am tired of my. I am like tired of my brain. That's what I keep telling my therapist. Yep. Excuse me. Like just that I'm exhausted. My brain is like spun out. Like my old co-founder used to have this saying about me, which is so funny because I don't know I had ADHD then, but like Thea's like not, it's like not worth doing business stuff with Thea after 3:30 p.m. Yeah. Like my brain, my cognitive function just goes down and like.
Have you ever heard of spoon theory?
Yes, that's exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. So why don't you explain it to the people?
Spoon theory was created originally for chronic illness. So to discuss like with chronic illness.
I've had chronic issues before and I remember learning about it.
Right?
Yep.
Every day is different. You don't know how you're going to show up in your day. You don't know how much energy you're going to be able to have. Sometimes taking a shower is going to literally take all the energy. So spoons equal energy. And for ADHD, they took the spoon theory originally for chronic illness, transferred it over also to use for autism because it made sense.
Sure.
And so I use it for ADHD because it makes total sense also.
Fuck yeah, I haven't thought about this before.
So spoon theory, spoons equal energy. We don't know how much energy we're going to have in our day, right?
Yeah.
If you have kids, you may have literally given all your spoons just trying to get them out the door. That's it. You're done. And so what ends up happening is if you don't have now energy, you're going into burnout mode. You're just coasting. And that takes a while to recover. Like some people, it can take a week sometimes to recover from just exerting all of your energy outward and then not having it at the end of the day. So when women come to me with low desire and ADHD, we really have to look at where is your energy going.
Yes.
And unfortunately, what that means is setting plans for you in your day. Prioritize. Where are you going to place your energy? Where do you want it? Do you want to show up later and have sex with your partner? Then let's make a plan. So weekly check-ins are really important. Seeing what kind of demands you have in your week, what if you have kids, what's going on with them, all those things. But again, all of this is what? Planning. So it becomes hard. It does.
I'm like, things to do.
So I like to tell my clients, like, you know how people do Sunday meal prep? Do Sunday relationship prep.
Yes.
Get down, sit down with your partner, enjoy the time together, look at each other's calendars, talk about what you want to do during the week, talk about the things you're excited about, the things you're not. Don't make it just about structuring your week. Have a conversation. It's like a mini date. It's a really awesome way just to connect, but also to set your week up. But the trick is to understand just because you're sitting down and trying to set it up for the week doesn't mean it's going to happen that exact way. Shit happens. Things change. We deal with disruptions in our schedules all the time. So for a lot of my clients, it's also realigning what your expectations are.
Yeah.
Expectations run the show. They do.
And unspoken expectations.
100%. So like with a lot of my clients that come to me who have low desire or are struggling with performance anxiety, the first thing I'm asking you is, what are your expectations of how sex is supposed to be? The second you tell me what your expectations are, we're able to uncover, well, what's realistic?
Yeah.
What's not realistic? Changing your mindset kind of deal.
And you were talking about the end of the day thing. I personally have found that I love sex around like 2 to 3 p.m.
And I'm a morning girl.
There you go. It's like, it's so funny. I mean, I find that it's before the energy drops off. And then when it comes to the spoons, the spoon thing, it's like you have to be self-aware for this to work too. You have to understand and give yourself grace, kind of like I was talking about how I go home and stare at a wall after podcasting days of like, ooh, this morning or that conflict or that issue that I had with my boss or this person or whatever, that took most of my spoons. And so I'm going to cancel those plans I have tonight. I'm going to have a bath tonight. Like you have to put self-care into play and advocating for yourself if you realize all of that has been used.
Well, it's going back to accepting your disability.
Yeah.
If you're not able to accept it, you're not going to be able to easily say, okay, well, I wanted to do this, but I really have to do this, and being okay with it. Yeah. Because most people who aren't able to accept their diagnosis and they're learning to, the shame is what holds them back from it, because they're still holding on to well, I should be able to show up. I should be able to do this. You know, me and my husband have an agreement that we will always talk about wanting to do at the end of our day or wanting to have sex in the morning. If it doesn't happen, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
not attached.
There's no shame. There's no guilt. There's no, I didn't show up for you. You didn't show up for me. We get it. We understand how we show up in the bedroom, outside of the bedroom, and how our ADHD shows up.
Yeah.
So that's a huge thing too for a lot of people. Like I had a client who came to me and she was like, I just feel like my partner doesn't prioritize our relationship. And he has ADHD also. And so the thing was, well, he may not prioritize. He's struggling with planning, the executive functioning. And so he's also, us ADHDers, we're in the now thinking. It's really hard for us to be futuristic for a lot of things. So when I say in the now, if like you tell me you have an appointment and I'm not near a calendar, okay, I registered it, but now I know I have to put it in a calendar. I'm in here and now thinking.
Yeah. I want to do it right then. Like
if you don't do it right then, you're not going to do it, right?
Yeah. I started taking a notepad to therapy.
I love that.
Because it felt like all of the tools. I was like, if I can't write down the fucking tools, definitely not using them.
Oh, I write tons of notes with my clients, but that's my working memory, my processing to support my disability. So I do that for me. But, you know, I said to her, it's not necessarily about there's no prioritization there. It's how is your ADHD showing up? How is their ADHD showing up? And then how do we set your environment up to make sure that you're able to show up in the relationship? So I tell a lot of clients that feel like they struggle with showing up for date nights. You know, I'm a victim of it too. Me and my husband say it all the time, like, oh, we don't go out enough. We don't do enough. We have to show up. And then you forget about it. Because in the moment you're like, oh, we don't do enough. And then that's it. But it's not just that's it. And that's where that prioritization thing can fall short. Because you feel then you don't care about me.
Right.
But that's not the case.
Right.
So sitting down, going out, getting a visual calendar, the physical cue, right?
I love that.
Sitting down, what days can you give to a date?
Yeah.
Writing it down.
Yeah.
Put it up. But you're not allowed to just put it anywhere. You actually have to always be able to physically see it.
Girl, when I put my to-do list in this drawer in the kitchen.
Out of sight, out of mind, girl.
Yeah.
You're never going to do it.
Big time. I have such a weird such a weird struggle of like, I don't remember the kinds of foods I have in my pantry to cook unless they're out on the counter. But when all my stuff to cook is out on the counter, I get stressed out by all the random shit and food on my counter.
Don't you love it? Like we need structure, but we hate structure.
Yeah. Yes. And then I want to rebel.
Yep.
Ugh. Yeah. I think that what's funny now is that I can identify pretty quickly, even over messaging with a guy from a dating app, like Field or Bumble or whatever, like I can identify the ADHD pretty quickly because we're moving at this like hyper speed together in our conversations.
You're getting really excited.
And we're getting excited and we're having like two different conversations at the same time and he's replying and it's and I've just like straight up asked people, like, do you have ADHD? Oh yeah, how'd you know? I can see myself ending up with somebody with it as well because I see it. I also see it as a fucking superpower. Like people my entire life since I was a teenager have been like, I don't understand your drive. Like, where does this drive come from? Like, this is just crazy to me. And now it all kind of makes sense. Like I get fixated and passionate about an idea and a vision, and I won't stop until I make it a reality. And I think I could build a cool life with somebody. That also is like...
And that's really awesome that you're able to see it that way because for a lot of people...
Sometimes,
like,
not all the time.
Yeah, we all have our bad days, right? But like for me personally, I don't see ADHD as a superpower. And the reason being for that is because I see it as what it is, as a disability. But it's how are you taking your experiences and are you building resiliency and are you finding how to navigate your symptoms?
Turn it into a superpower.
100%. Yeah. And like with my husband, I'm so happy that he has ADHD because it helps us understand each other. But it's important to note that sometimes I want to yeet my husband at the fucking wall because of his ADHD. Me and him are on different pages with our ADHD sometimes. Yeah. And it's hard. Like I want to sit down and have a conversation with you and he's just like, go, go, go. He's going in and out of each room. And I'm like, dude,
oh my God,
can you just sit down and let me talk?
Totally.
Right?
Blessing and a curse.
So exactly. But this is what comes up with a lot of couples.
Yeah.
You know, people who have ADHD together, a lot of people may think that that's easier, but if you're not similar, it can actually sometimes be harder because now you have to get in line with understanding, okay, how is my partner showing up and how does that interact with sex, right? Like now you have two different people with two different possible sensory issues, two different hyperfixations. You know what I mean? Like you see where this is going, right?
Yeah.
So it can be hard, but it can also be very validating. And it's how you view it and what you do with it.
Yeah.
And I love to hear that you have just taken it and rolled with it, and you've done such amazing things with it.
If you are watching or listening to this, you're probably interested in sex and or kink and are curious about finding new partners to explore things with. However, it can be difficult to find those people. The thing I love about the HUD app is that it's more than just an app. They have a community, a podcast, and a ton of education. And inside of their app is a bedroom feature, so you can select all of the things you're interested in, all of the things you want to try, all the things you don't want to try, and that can be shown to potential future partners. So to learn more, go to hudapp.com/sextalk. That is hudapp.com/sextalk, SEGGSTALK. I was recently giving a blowjob to a partner, and one of the things that I love incorporating into all types of play is lube. But specifically with blowjobs, I love being able to use this honeydew flavor of mochi melt because it makes it so much more fun and delicious for both parties. I also enjoy using it for penetrative sex, and in the past, I found that I can't really use flavored lube down there because it could upset my pH. However, mochi melt is pH balanced, it is food grade, and it is FDA approved, which makes it completely safe for use down there for the ladies and the fellas. If you want to try out mochi melt, go to mochimelt.com and use code THEA, THEA, for 15% off of your entire order. Mommy Thea recently created a profile on sensually.com, which is a sex-positive platform for people to both provide and seek out sex-positive and sensual experiences, which can take place both online and in person. They have a wide variety of creators on their platform, ranging from BDSM experts to sex coaches to escorts to erotic artists. They have it all. It is completely free to sign up, whether you want to create an account or seek out experiences. You can learn more by going to sensually.com. That is sensuali.com. I recently squirted for the first time, and it was a lot of fluid. I was surprised. I squirted like 5 times in a row the first time I did it, and everything was drenched. I spent the entire next day doing multiple loads of laundry, and as excited as I was to have squirted for the first time, I also realized that I needed a solution for the problem at hand. So I am so excited to be working with Splash Blanket. They create incredible waterproof blankets. They can be used for squirting, for sex in general. They absorb up to 1 liter of liquid. I mean, I just use mine as a cozy blanket. They are extremely diverse, and I absolutely love them. So go to splashblanket.us and use code SEGGS, SEGGS, for 15% off of your entire order. And more so now that I know what it is, but prior to that, I mean, it wasn't always like that. Like I also heavily struggle with, you know, alcoholism in my early 20s, and again more recently. And it's like, you know, like I was saying with that kind of graph trajectory, when I wasn't aware of my diagnosis, when I wasn't in therapy, when I wasn't taking good care of myself and my body and my mind, it was the downward spiral of ADHD, of really, and without medication as well, of abusing alcohol, food, sex, money. I mean, all of these things, it was extreme. And so, like you said, it's active and it's daily, the work that I do to combat my impulses to go all in on a lot of shit.
But that also is you saying that you matter because you're showing up for yourself.
Oh.
And that's a really awesome thing. And when you really can recognize that you matter, and a lot of my clients struggle because they think that they are not happy or they don't care about themselves. And I'm like, listen, you're here. You're pouring your heart out in our sessions. You are doing the work. Like, all I see is that you're showing yourself that you matter. If you didn't, why would you ever put yourself in this situation? It's uncomfortable as hell to be vulnerable, especially with a stranger. Somebody who is just there to help guide you and support you wherever you're looking to go.
That's a good point, because I can get down on myself and be like, when is all this self-love stuff going to snap? But the reality is like I relapsed with alcohol last summer, and it's like I think that me just doing the work and staying sober and seeing a therapist every week, which is a lot for me, like that shows the self-love that I've cultivated.
And we know that, you know, substance use, sex is generally used for maladaptive coping. So it's like a bad coping skill.
Comfort seeking for me.
It's comfort, 100%.
Connection.
It's doing something. It's stopping you from having to pay attention to the things that you're using the alcohol or the sex to mask, to avoid. And so this is why, like, people who say, you know, I don't get it. Like, me and my partner, we don't necessarily have a really great relationship, but we have amazing sex. Or you'll have a fight and then you'll have amazing sex. And sometimes, not all the time, it can't be said for everything. The reason being for that is because you're avoiding the communication and the vulnerability in real time, and you're using and placing it in the bedroom.
But how would that make good sex?
The passion, the drive. You're literally putting all your energy and attention into that rather than into the communication, into better understanding. Well, why are we fighting? What's going on here?
What's really
because
happening?
It's an avoidance.
Yes,
and that is
avoidance.
what the literature is saying about hypersexuality, that it's definitely seen more as possibly a maladaptive coping skill. But we can't say that it's definitely a thing that people with ADHD have. It's not a symptom of ADHD. And I think that's important for people to know.
Okay.
Because not everybody with ADHD is going to have hypersexuality.
Right. In fact, you were saying many women with low libido.
Yeah, exactly. So you can go on the opposite side, hyposexuality.
Hypo. Oh, okay. Yeah. I definitely, so much has snapped into place since learning about my diagnosis and also just being able to see the dopamine seeking patterns. So when I first discovered kink and BDSM, I was fucking going for it. I was having lots of fun doing lots of kinky shit. Had a blast on field. And also now calling in a long-term partner, I'm like, oh, I got really used to the novelty of sexual experiences. And now I need to recalibrate a little bit because sex for the last year or two being single has looked like this new kinky novel experience with often new partners.
And I mean, you can still create novelty. It just becomes harder because the newness of a new partner or a new situation is taking the work away from us to do, which means we're not using our executive functioning. So this is why creating novelty in a longer relationship can be harder, because what we're now asking ourselves to do is exert more energy, more attention to create scenes, create difference, create all of that. So exploring resources, tools, what can you add to it? Working together on this, not making yourself be the one to deplete and have to be the one to figure it all out as well. It can be so helpful.
You blew my mind with the novelty of a new partner, a new experience is like bypassing the, what'd you say? The
executive functioning of you needing to come up with the planning. Right?
The new novel. Exciting kinky thing. It's just there because it's a new person. Oh my God. Yeah. I think I'm gonna have my work cut out for me when I get into my next relationship, just because it's a lot of relearning, because I didn't know I had ADHD and I didn't know how kinky I was in my last relationship. So it's gonna be a lot.
It's all exploring. And again, I can't. Everyone's going to want to vomit.
No, every time, last guest too, it's just communicate.
I mean, I know. Well, it's, mental health, right? It is key. It is. I tell a lot of people that we avoid because we don't want to, quote, rock the boat. Girl, the boat is rocking. It's in the middle of the Atlantic, and your reservations are going overboard, and you are going to sink at some time. Like, it's already rocking. So it's the same thing with sex. It can be uncomfortable. We don't like to talk about it. That's just how we've been raised. And it's hard to talk about what we like, what we don't like. And sometimes we don't even know what we like and we don't like. But that in itself is so awesome when you don't, because it can be fun. It becomes even a further exploration of what you like and you don't like. Like the other day, I was on the couch with my son, and he's in this new, retaliation phase. He's 3. And he got upset and angry, and he scratched me. Normal people would be like, ow. And I was like, that gave me the chills. What was that about? And I'm like, maybe I should bring this into the bedroom. I'm constantly learning new things about myself, my interactions outside of your partner. Like, look at everything you do in your day-to-day as an ADHDer. Pick up on all the things that make you feel good, don't make you feel good. You're stimulated in a good way, negative way. And then see how you can either add it to the bedroom or take it away from the bedroom.
So now you're into scratching in the bedroom.
I don't know what I'm into yet, but it definitely did something. And then it was funny because I told my husband, I'm like, scratch me. So he scratched me and it worked. And then the next time we, got intimate, he did it. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, you said you liked it.
Stuff.
I was like, dude, I got ADHD. I liked it yesterday and not today. So be mindful again, that what you like today might not be there tomorrow, but it may be there the next day. And it's ever changing, which can be exhausting, but give yourself grace with it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. What advice would you give to somebody recently diagnosed? Because I feel like it's so fucking confusing.
It is. One of the things I can say that is so important is the education piece. Becoming educated on what ADHD is.
Hyperfixate on it, baby.
Yeah, right?
Go down the rabbit hole.
In a good way, hopefully, not a negative, right?
Yeah.
Because the education piece is what I work with my clients on. They're ready to come in and talk about sex. And I'm like, we have to pause.
Right.
We can't
Let's
get
help
there
you
yet.
Understand.
We have to understand what ADHD is. But then it's that second piece of really accepting it. You're relearning your identity.
Yeah.
You're finally getting like the light shown like in your face, and you're realizing, wow, I wasn't lazy. Wow, I wasn't just not showing up. Like there was something there.
Right.
So it can be validating, but it's also really scary because you're now forced to have to relearn of who you are. Yeah. That's a huge thing to have to navigate.
And I like that you mentioned the grief earlier, because I don't think I've given myself that space yet.
And we know research says that grieving your diagnosis is vital to then accepting it. It really is.
It's the stages of grief. Yeah. Acceptance is the first one.
Yeah, it is. But in order to get there, you have to grieve. And part of grieving is becoming educated and working with somebody to see how your ADHD shows up. Not like because
blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I've seen is like a general dismissiveness towards ADHD of like, oh, everyone has it. Or people saying, that's my ADHD, when like they don't fucking have it. And now that I have it and I'm diagnosed, I'm like, I get kind of irritated by that. What do you think I could say to somebody? Because I've identified these kind of traits within myself where I do play around with it. Like, I have ADHD. It's really hard for me to do A, B, and C. Like, I enjoy trying to educate people on it. But then sometimes I'm met with this like, I have it too. Everyone has trouble to focus. Oh, social media did that to our brains.
Yeah, well, that also comes from lack of education on knowing ADHD and its severity, like everything with it. But you're also not going to be able to stop people from being stuck in their own belief systems. And unfortunately, and this is why, like, I don't like to call ADHD a superpower, because when we say that, what we're doing is we're discrediting the real struggles that come from it. And tons of people then are like, oh, but it's a superpower. Like, you're fine. Just do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, I've created it into a superpower, but like, it's hard. Like the amount of energy that you have to exert and give. It's so hard.
My spoons are gone by 3, baby.
Exactly. Sometimes mine's gone in a minute. It's like, it's a struggle. But when we're trying to educate people on ADHD, either they're going to be accepting of it or they're not. And if they're not, you can't do anything about it. But it's important for people to really understand that ADHD isn't just something that, you can't focus.
Everyone's got it because of technology. Like, ADHD is a real diagnosis, and it can massively impact your life.
Yeah. And, the problem too, so social media, it's a good thing and it's not at the same time.
Yes.
Everyone is doing a lot of self-diagnosing, because getting properly diagnosed is a privilege, because it costs a lot.
It's confusing.
It's hard, it's confusing, and it's a lot of money if it's done by the correct person, which is generally a neuropsychological doctor, a psychologist.
Not just a psychiatrist?
A psychiatrist can, yes. Okay, but neuropsychologists are the ones that are doing like the full-on true assessments, and they can be anywhere between like $2,000 to $7,000. It's a very privileged thing to get a diagnosis. Wow. So when people hear the symptoms on social media, it's I got that. That makes sense, Okay, cool. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people recognizing and realizing, hey, that sounds like me, and then feeling okay about it. One of the questions that are asked when people are being screened later on in life, women, not men, did you have these symptoms before you got your period? And the reason being for that
Interesting.
is because when a girl gets their period, the symptoms associated with your menstrual cycle can create the same, if not similar, symptoms as ADHD.
Whoa.
And so if you didn't have those symptoms before your period, there's a good chance that you actually don't have ADHD, but your hormones are creating similar, if not same symptoms as ADHD. At the end of the day, who cares what's causing it?
What?
We still need to approach it in a way that works and is beneficial for you. And this is why women who are on medication, you can notice that when you get your period, your medication may not work because all the hormones are affecting the ability in your brain to actually regulate and use them the way that they're supposed to.
Wow. So I also have PMDD. That's a fun one.
Yeah.
I've seen some stuff out there about the correlation between ADHD
no research,
and PMDD.
No research in terms of the sexuality piece. Very
but
lacking.
a link between those two?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's same thing with perimenopause and menopause. So if somebody has ADHD and they're going through all the symptoms of perimenopause, your ADHD symptoms are like times 10.
Whoa.
You're dealing with hormones that affect the brain.
Yeah.
And so when you have menopause, we know that attention and working memory deficits are huge in women with ADHD, more so than those without ADHD that go through menopause.
Fascinating. Yeah, I am trying to rework my medications soon because my PMDD it's rough. Like I'm very in touch with my cycle, so I know it's coming now. At least before, it was actually my mom who was like, "You call me up unwell with talking about your mental health the same week every month, and it scares me." And I was like, "Ooh, okay, I got to look into this." So now that I know that I know when it's coming, but right now I'm post period, the progesterone, it's as that's cruising, I mean, my body's trying to make a baby. I'm horny. I'm excited. I schedule my podcast recordings around it. I try to.
I love that you're using your cycle as a means of organizing your time because that is a beautiful thing to do.
I've optimized my life around it.
Girl, you are kicking ass. You really are. And what you're even talking about is so much energy. You are just pancake stack upon pancake stack of you having to navigate, but you're still doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Don't give up. If you have ADHD out there and you feel like you are just seriously depleted, it makes sense. That's the disability. But you do have choice. You get to determine if you want to show up. Choice does not mean easy. It never really is.
Yeah.
It's sacrifice. It's energy inducing. But that's where that education piece comes in.
And I've only been able to, I like to see it as how I kind of hack my brain and gamify my life and make certain things fun and optimized, but only because I understand. And I know that I have this diagnosis, both PMDD and ADHD, and I know it's coming. I know that I'm not going to make a ton of plans the week before my period because I'm going to feel like the fucking world is ending. So really trying to optimize
And you
life.
just said it. Because you're educated, because you're informed, you're more in control.
Yeah.
When we aren't educated or we don't understand what's going on, we can't be in control. And that falls into our relationships and our sex.
And it feels really scary when you're in that unknown of why does this keep happening? What's happening with my mental health?
And take that into the bedroom, right? If you have that mentality, what do? We avoid. We shut down. And this is something that
if we don't know why the other person is not wanting it or this thing is happening or they're feeling weird about when I touch them in this certain way. Yeah.
And you're going to just avoid because you don't understand.
Right.
I recently was talking to a friend of mine who was talking about how she thinks there's something wrong with her because she wants to have sex with her partner, but she's not getting wet. And I'm like,
oh gosh.
I'm like, no. And I just provided her the education on you can want something. Desire and arousal are two separate entities, right? You can
and
want
wetness
it.
is not wetness is not correlated to arousal.
Absolutely not. It's arousal non-concordance.
It can be, but it's not.
You can become wet and not want it at all, right? So I educated her on it, and I said, "Have you ever went and bought lube?" She's like, "No, lube is only used when you need it, when you can't produce." And I'm like, "No, lube can be added even when you produce. It gets into nooks and crannies, and it's so much fun."
Great. Yeah.
And the second she understood that, she
took the shame out of it.
Yeah, it took the shame out of it. She stopped pointing towards herself. She told her partner. They went out to Walmart, bought lube, and she felt amazing. It's the education that is so vital. So like when people come to me as a sex therapist, they're ready to go and they think, okay, give me the tools.
I want to have the spicy sex is probably right when they go to a therapist.
Do. And it turns into education. And the second my clients start to become educated, the change is right in front of them.
Oh.
And it's usually short term. Like my clients are not with me for a very long time. If you're there, you're ready, you're educated. Granted, like, you know, everyone comes with their own bag. And depending on if there's trauma there, that can take a little longer, if not maybe a decent amount of time. But generally, it's the education that's missing. And once you put it there, you're golden.
So what are some of the success stories from your ADHD sex?
Of mine?
Clients.
Oh, of clients?
Or of yours.
So some of my clients, so for instance, I had a client that struggled immensely with the sensory issues. They didn't like their partner touching them on their arms for whatever reason. It was a very weird, because her partner had like rough fingertips. Like,
I don't know.
You shook, right? And so she didn't like that, and she wouldn't say anything because he was touching her. She wanted him to touch her.
Don't want to reject the person, make them feel worse, do the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And so she wasn't saying anything, because then it's like, okay, well then don't touch me. So I said to her, I was like, would you and your partner be okay with wearing gloves?
Oh.
What if he wore one of the
latex gloves?
Latex or cotton gloves.
Yeah.
And she's like, will that work? And I was like, I don't know.
Or this this whole reaction of like, is that weird? Is that going to be weird? Well, if it's just the two of you in your bedroom alone, honey, like try it.
I said, try it.
Yeah.
Tell me if it works. If it doesn't, okay. We had 2 sessions together. That was it. That's all she needed.
Wow.
Somebody to tell her, put on gloves.
Yeah. Because now I want my husband to touch me. Yeah.
Because we don't think outside of the box.
Right.
Like
we need somebody. We need an outside party to see these things.
My husband has a beard. I love his beard, but I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, I really do. I struggle with it. It is a sensory. So if we're kissing, I can't kiss him without like him completely trimmed. So he'll have to do that, take some time. And if not, he'll kiss me other places to make up for it, because I'm okay with that. I'm not okay because it turns into the smell. And he doesn't smell bad.
Okay. I just like beard smell. I don't know what that is, but I don't want it.
Kalamazoo from Lush, that's what he uses. It's a brand, whatever. But for me, that's a double sensory. So it's, again...
Oh, the good smell of a thing, of a product.
Yeah.
Okay,
It can be overstimulating. Sure. And for me, I can't do it. So it's just changing it up, changing your environment. And that's what happens with my clients. They come in, they're like, I can't do this. Well, let's think outside of the box.
I love that.
How is your ADHD showing up?
Yes.
This is what's happening. Let's try this.
Yep.
I had a client who came to me that was autoerotic, where they got off on seeing themselves. Oh. They enjoy masturbating to themselves. Like they find themselves sexy.
Cool.
And so when they were with their partner, they couldn't really get turned on because...
They get turned on by themselves.
Exactly. So the first part of it...
Do it in a mirror, friends.
The mirror on the ceiling, right?
Hot.
We couldn't do that, but I suggested, is your partner willing to come into a session, and can we talk about this with them? And let's think of ways that we can create the environment to work for you.
Wow.
He came in. He was an amazing partner, and that, you have to be open to it for things to work. He was willing. They put a mirror next to her. She was engaging while, being intimate. And then when she really wanted to orgasm, she would look at the mirror. And
in front of you in your office?
No, not in my office. Okay. No, in their own home. Sorry. I should have said that. No sex, no reenactments in the office. No.
Yeah.
But in their
just
bedroom.
Clarify.
Yeah, no. I would have gotten my license stripped if that was the case.
Well, and I mean, in my mind, I'm imagining my partner looking at themselves in a mirror, like jacking off or something. That's fucking hot. Look at yourself. Yeah, go for it. Like, I don't know. It's the unspoken things where there's shame attached that then are not spoken, and then there's the disconnect grows.
The second you start breaking away the shame with education, and you set your environment, I can't say it enough.
Yeah,
you set your environment, your relationship, and your sex up for success. Yeah. Everything gets better. It does. And that's the success.
I love that. Well, this has been an amazing conversation.
It's been awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your stuff. I'm so happy to be sitting across from someone so empowered in their sexuality and kicking ass. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I since my diagnosis, I've been wanting to chat with it a lot about with a lot of people about it because I just find it very interesting as I learn about myself. But I'm often met with oh yeah, I have it too, or don't blame it on that. Don't blame it on your ADHD, that kind of thing. And I just, I really appreciate the work you're doing and really appreciate the academic work you're doing because, like you said, there's not research being done on this stuff.
And we deserve it. We totally deserve it. Yes. Hopefully my ADHD didn't make anything go down a different path because I can totally get off the beaten track.
No, that was fucking great. We covered a lot of ground, and I think the ADHD girlies and guys are gonna love this and be happy for our chat. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode today. Be sure to stay in touch with us on socials at Seggs Talk Radio Podcast. That is SEGGS Talk Radio Podcast.